I just wondered because I really like this Fritz Lang film, and I don't know what you're talking about. I had a great time with this.
You are a liar and a charlatan.
What?
That's Fritz Lang.
Edward G. Robinson, Dan Duria, Raymond Massey. I love him from Arsenic and Old Lace, but yeah, I thought Woman in the Window is fantastic.
I hope that Mark Begley enjoyed that solely just because he made us watch this movie.
And he's not here to defend it or defend himself.
Defend yourself. God, because you know what? This movie is not defending itself very well, because it's pretty. Would the word indefensible work with a movie like The Woman in the Window, the 2021 Joe Wright film based on a book by A.J. Finn?
Like a hit book? This was a hit book, right?
It's because people hitting each other over the head with it. Well, it's a hit, all right.
I mean, I was listening to this thing on the media from NPR, and it was all about the publishing industry. And they're like, well, we're always looking for the next big hit. You know, The Girl in the Window, The Girl with the Tattoo, The Girl on the Train. And I'm like, Woman in the Window was a hit? Like, really? Completely passed me by. I never even heard of this thing before, nor had I heard of the movie before.
So on this episode of the Kulturecast, I'm still your host, Chris Dashiu. I'm joined by the perpetually confused about The Woman in the Window, the projection booth podcast, Mike White.
The Women in the Window and the projection booth. Yes.
The Woman in the Window.
This is a safe place. I'm agoraphobic. I can't go outside. I've been slipping, getting into a really dark frame of mind.
So what's the latest on the street?
Your neighbor, she's become a friend.
Her name is Jane Russell.
Do you want to go outside?
You know, I have a shrink of my own. My neighbor Jane, she's been stabbed.
Detective Little, NYPD.
Where's Jane?
Mr. Russell believes that you made a mistake.
You have never met my wife.
Ma'am, you all right?
I know Jane. Jane's been in my house.
I'm Jane Russell.
I'm not crazy.
I know what I saw.
They're all hiding something.
You will not
Never met my mother.
Stop watching our house.
Your doctor said that your meds can cause hallucinations.
I'm not hallucinating. I think there is somebody in my house.
Don't go looking into other people's houses. You won't like what you see.
Yeah, Mark Begley programmed this for us.
So obviously I went in with no preconceived notions.
Right.
No idea that this movie even existed.
And here we are.
And here we are.
Yep.
Here we are. Which this movie feels a lot like a better movie to me. It feels a lot like the movie Copycat with Holly Hunter and Sigourney Weaver. Do you remember that one? And a fantastic turn by Harry Connick Jr.
No.
That was pretty good. I think it was like mid-90s.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I missed out on that Harry Connick Jr. role.
Yeah. That's also right there with like The Bone Collector. Did you ever see The Bone?
I know what it is, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, that whole Bone Collector.
That's Jeffrey Deaver, isn't it? Is that a Jeffrey Deaver book? That's based, because I guess this is based on a book, isn't it? Yikes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's Lincoln Rhymes?
Yeah,
Or
the
is that
character
Yeah.
that Tyler Perry, Medea, plays in the new movie.
Oh God, I forgot that there was.
Yeah. Yep.
God, I forgot. And there was a TV show about it too.
I think for like an episode or two, maybe one season.
But the Denzel movie with Angelina Jolie, where he's housebound, it's not necessarily as voyeuristic. Like the voyeurism, I was like, cool, I'm in for this. A remake of Rear Window. I'm all about this. Let's do it.
Well, The Woman in the Window is not quite that, Mike White.
What? It's not.
Yeah, right. So the film is directed by Joe Wright. Like we mentioned, it's based on the book, The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. And who is the titular woman in the window? Amy Adams. She plays a woman who lives as child psychologist, which they mention a million times, who lives in a brownstone in New York. And she's apparently separated from her husband and her daughter, and she's an agoraphobe. We don't know why, but she is. So she spends all of her days looking out the windows, trying to figure out what everybody else is doing, and she gets embroiled in a possible murder of her across the street neighbor who just moved in, the Russell family. Yeah, we will be talking spoilers because this is a movie that came out a year ago on Netflix. But guess what? It is on Netflix, which means our opinions essentially shouldn't matter on whether or not you should watch it because it costs a whole lot of bupkis to do so. And it's effectively a new movie. So, Mike, let's just get right into it. What did you think of The Woman in the Window?
I feel like it could have been better. Like,
whoa.
I know, very controversial opinion. Yeah. Just felt so familiar. It was so many of these tropes that I've seen. Like, how many movies have I mentioned already? And we haven't even started talking about Woman in the Window. And I really like, they telegraph all of the Hitchcock stuff so much, even to the point of like her watching Rear Window. And I know she's watching Laura, which is not Hitchcock, that's Preminger, but just like, it's pulling from better things and it's not living up to what it's pulling. I mean, I'm a huge Rear Window fan and I was just like, oh, this will be great. I even like some shitty versions of that. Like, what was it? The Lookout was one of them. I can't remember what else. Well, actually, The Lookout, I think, was the Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie. I like that a lot, but there was one, was it Shia LaBeouf where he was stuck in a house?
Oh, Suburbia.
Thank you. But this, like, you don't just catch agoraphobia because of a traumatic incident. You can't just like unlock, oh, I had this trauma. Now I'm okay walking outside. It doesn't work that way. And how does she visit her patients? Or do they visit her? Or is this all via Zoom and Skype and stuff?
I guess she visited her patients in person before she became an agoraphobe. And she had a really good nest egg saved up, apparently. At least again,
her place is huge.
She owns a building.
Yeah.
She owns a Manhattan brownstone.
And she's able to have a tenant down in the basement, the always shifty Wyatt Russell.
Right.
As
the shiftiest of shifty.
What, he's David Winters, but then he corrects it to Winter, but then she keeps calling him Winters through the movie. And I'm just like, did you not hear him correct you? I don't know. How much of this movie is real and how much of this is in her head? Is Anthony Mackie alive or is she talking to a dead person on the phone?
She's having an interior monologue.
Okay.
I assume. Right. Yeah.
Because he's dead. The daughter's dead.
Mike!
Sorry.
How could you?
I could see it about a half an hour in, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, the way it's presented also doesn't do it any favors. It's presented in such a way that they draw attention to it, which means it must matter to the narrative more than just her talking to her husband, because you never see her interacting with the phone. It's always her just like talk. You hear what you perceive to be her talking on the phone, but you don't see her talking on the phone. It's sure. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I didn't read the book, but Tracy Letts' script, it's like it's written by robots. Everybody's super weird. And what I can't figure out is if it's what you kind of already mentioned, is everybody super weird in this movie for 3/4, 9/10 of it, because they're all in her head not all in her head, because thankfully that's not the twist. That's what I thought the twist was going to be.
Right.
Oh, movie's in her head. Like, oh, fuck me running. That's never been done before. I assumed that the twist also bleeds into the way we're seeing the characters throughout all acting weird because she's hallucinating and being weird, which if that's perfectly fine, that makes sense. And that's why the movie's weird, because otherwise Tracy Letts' script, it's like written by a robot. The best of times and the blurst of times. Blurst! Like that's the characters.
Stupid monkey.
Yeah, the characters don't act like real people.
No.
Like
Gary
at
Oldman?
All.
Gary Oldman, come on.
What is this movie, frankly? Like when Begley pitched it to me, all he said was, it's a movie where everyone in the movie feels like they're acting in a different movie.
Why did he recommend it then?
Because it's weird. Because the movie is weird.
It is weird. He's right about that.
I mean, that's why. Because I would agree it's not a good movie, but if you want to see some good actors just being fucking bizarre.
Yeah, because we should say this is A-list cast all the way through here.
Gary Oldman is in this movie.
Gary Oldman, Julianne Moore, Jennifer Jason Leigh, completely wasted Jennifer Jason Leigh. I already mentioned Anthony Mackie and Wyatt Russell. And we got Fred Hershiser or whatever as the kid. He's the only one that I didn't know. And then even Brian Tyree Henry as one of the two detectives in here. I'm just like,
and don't forget Tracy Letts. Don't forget Tracy Letts as the psychiatrist.
Oh,
you got to be in your own movie when you're writing the screenplay.
Oh boy.
Yikes.
But all these actors, yeah, I'm like, oh wow, look at Amy Adams and Julianne Moore sharing a scene. This is pretty cool. I really like this. And then Julianne Moore just disappears from the movie and she's replaced by Jennifer Jason Leigh. And I was like, is this a nod to Single White Female? I'd rather be watching a sequel to Single White Female right now. I'd rather watch the original Single White Female, Single White Female. And I'm just thinking all of these things rather than trying to watch this movie.
Well, Amy Adams is just like screaming in the background and acting weird. Like, we do Mike White March every year, and next year it's going to be Mike White May. But this year you mentioned something that stuck with me, which is you don't like when characters, like in movies, when actors have to play characters a certain way. Mm-hmm. Like, and I forget, it's characters that are like, forget that they have memories, or is it characters that are like drunk?
I really hate drunk acting. Yeah.
Okay. I really hate whatever this is, which is like, what is this? This is like drugged up acting. Like the whole, is it real? Is it not thing? Like, I don't care anymore. This is a fucking tired trope. Right. Like tired to the point of the fact that this is 3/4 of the movie is just like,
well, the
makes
other
my
trope,
brain hurt.
The other trope that I can't stand is we're not crazy, you're crazy. This whole like I would say like ultimate gaslighting kind of thing. Like, my daughter was on this plane. No, she was not on this plane. We've never seen your daughter on here. Or, where's my wife? Oh, your wife wasn't even with you when you checked into this hotel room, sir. Like this kind of gaslighting bullshit. And it's just like, no, my wife isn't Julianne Moore. My wife is Jennifer Jason Leigh. You've never seen Julianne Moore before. Well, what about her earring? And what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, oh God. And they're going to just disprove every single thing through the whole movie. Wyatt Russell, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, just admit, yeah, she was down on my, like, him holding out is the dumbest part of this entire movie. I don't get, like, if he had just like opened his mouth and said, oh yeah, I was banging her last night, she left her earrings on my bedside table, mystery solved. But instead it's no, she doesn't even exist. We don't even know what you're talking about. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy because they're trying to drive her crazy.
It's very like been done before. I've seen Rosemary's Baby. I saw the Stepford Wives. It's that same thing where it's like, no, you are the one who is crazy. It's right. Like, but do you see your eyes? Like, do you see your eyes? You have like a baby's leg dangling out of your mouth and you're telling me that I'm crazy. Like that's the level of insanity in these kinds of movies that it's like in the mouth of madness. Like, no, you are the crazy one as the monsters are running around outside. Yeah. Like, and the ending of the movie like steers into that with that movie. In this movie, it's like, no, you were not crazy. It was a bad trip.
Yeah. You shouldn't have been taking all those drugs, Anna Fox.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah. I mean, that she loans the kid that lives across the street, this creepiest of creep kids, loans him a copy of Gaslight. I was like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Gaslight. Yes, I got it. God damn.
Yeah, Fred Heckinger as the child teenage serial killer is
Teenage serial killer going on 35 years old, he looks like. Not sympathetic at all. I don't care about this kid. When Gary Oldman smacks him across the face, which you would think maybe that would stop like people in their tracks and say, don't hit your kid in my house. Like, because he just beats the shit out of the kid at one point. And I'm like, okay, yeah, can you hit him again? Because I wouldn't mind seeing that.
fucking Christ.
I'm sorry.
It's real. I mean, it's the problem with the movie feels like it's just overwritten. Like
Yeah.
everything is overwritten. Like the audience is a complete and utter moron, and we would never understand anything without them being like hyper overt about it.
Uh-huh.
Like including Hitchcock on screen.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Good God, Joe Wright. Like, what are you doing?
He's only 22 years old, but he looks a lot older in this movie to me.
I don't understand Joe Wright in this, because like this is also a weird project for him, because he's more consider him more of like a period piece guy, right?
Yeah. Pride and Prejudice.
Atonement,
he
Anna
did
Karina.
But he did do Hannah, which
But
I have to
Hannah's an
say,
action movie.
Hannah's an action movie, and I love Hannah. I love the original Hannah. I haven't seen the series, but I love that movie.
I haven't seen the movie, but I have seen like Atonement, and it's not great, but it's better than this movie. I mean, I think the problem with Atonement is like it's just kind of a real downer of a movie, which is fine. But I mean, you know, whatever. It's another. Again, I think the other issue is like that's based off of a book, and that's pretty good. Like this is based off of a book, and it's like an insane person wrote it.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the dialogue is just fucking weird. Like the way the characters interact with one another is so stilted and odd. There's never a time where you feel like the characters could actually have a conversation with one another. Do you know what I mean? It feels like all they're doing is just furthering the plot. Like there's never like a moment where a character just takes a moment to be like, oh yeah, you know, X, Y, and Z and this, that, and something else. Like every time, like even when Julianne Moore is like, this is my son. And then it's like, Jesus Christ.
He's my guy. You know, when you just say he's my guy.
What the fuck?
What are you talking about?
What are the performances in this movie actually? Like, I don't understand, man. They're so fucking bizarre. That whole scene where she's just saying, he's my guy.
I drew this picture of you. Okay, thanks. and I'm smarter than the main character because I'm just like, hey, don't forget that picture. She drew that picture of you. Don't you remember that?
You know,
and I'm just like,
Amy Adams
at
is
the
on
TV.
drugs. That's the problem.
I love Amy Adams. So what is she doing in this?
I think the problem is like the book was really popular. And like the book and the movie are practically the same from everything that I've read and looked at. Like there's not a lot of changes. Like the premise is the same. The conclusion is the same. I don't understand here. Like, is it what if they're trying to do Hitchcock? What did they see that? Was Joe Wright like, this is going to be my Hitchcock tribute? Like, do you know what Hitchcock is?
Right.
I also hate that these fucking movies have like all these movies this month have almost been predicated on like a twist. Like this movie sits on that twist so hard.
Oh, God,
and the twist is so like when they showed what actually was going on with the Anthony Mackie character, when they showed it, I honest to God, okay, there's a shot in this movie where Amy Adams is just like, I thought for sure the scene where she starts just talking and rambling. She's like, I'm a mother and I would never do it. And it's just like this fucking weird, like just verbal diarrhea. But the camera kind of like follows her as she's walking, and it starts getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. I swear to God, I thought that it was going to turn. It was going to do a reverse shot of what she was looking at, and there was going to be nobody, and she was just going to be in there by herself. Like, I was convinced it was all in her mind. And then Brian Tyree Henry goes, "Ma'am, your family is dead." And then it just like smash cuts to her driving in a car with Anthony Mackie.
Yes.
It's like, oh,
Yes.
oh, okay. So what's going on in this movie is she killed her family. She killed her family. She killed her family by accident because she was answering the phone of the man she was fucking behind her husband's back.
Yep.
She killed her daughter and her husband.
And we've seen other people get killed in car crashes, usually more towards the beginning of the film. What was that? The Descent was a great car crash. Oh gosh, there's so many good ones. And I'm just like, all right, I've seen this before in other movies as well. Like, obviously cars crash in movies all the time, but I'm just like, I start thinking of other better movies because I'm just like, all right, like maybe pin M. Night Shyamalan to a tree or something. I don't know.
That's kind of what this movie felt like. In a way, it's like a really like subpar M. Night Shyamalan film.
Which is saying something.
Right.
Yeah, this is like worse than Lady in the Pool or whatever it was.
Well, and what's funny is I just watched the first 3 M. Night films, and Sixth Sense is the most humanistic one, and the dialogue doesn't feel stilted and weird, but the longer the movies go, the weirder the dialogue gets because it stops being about characters conversing as much as plot points being forwarded or plot beats being contextualized or recontextualized, at least in something like Signs. This movie is almost that entirely. It's like, I've never watched a movie where the characters act like this towards one another, where it's like, yes, would you like to further the plot? Yes, I would too. Let us go now. What?
Do they mention that she's in a car wreck before we find out towards the end that she had been?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, because apparently in the book, there's a physical therapist that works with her, helping her get over her car accident. So I think the book might have actually telegraphed it even more than the movie.
Would it have telegraphed it in this movie if she had been going to a physical therapist? Would you have been like, oh, her family must be dead?
Well, at least we would have known there was a car accident.
Right. It almost feels like the movie's not playing fair in a lot of ways. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that's the whole, like, the thing with Anthony Mackie and Amy Adams interacting before you see like the one real interaction. It feels like, for all the other dialogue in the movie feeling weird, it's the weirdest because he's like, all right, slugger, like yeah. What in, like, that for me was like the dead giveaway when he's like, oh, that's right, slugger. Like, what the fuck is this? It's so bizarre. Real people don't talk like this at all. Like at all. Real people don't talk this way.
I concur.
Right? Yes. It's bizarre because, again, like, the movie is, I can't figure out if the movie is trying to just be, the people are weird because that's all being fucked up in her mind.
Right.
Like, is that what it's doing? I must be, right?
Yeah. What's weird too, because I thought this was a pandemic movie just because of
it is.
Well, but I think principal photography wrapped back in 2018. And it was originally supposed to be released in October 2019. So
never mind then.
Yeah. I mean, because just the way that it feels, where it's just like, we have this one character, we're going to follow her most of the time. Even when they've got the characters across the street, I'm like, okay, well, they have one person in this room, one person down here, one person down there. They can shoot all of these people separately. We've got Anthony Mackie, he's voiceovering. So, and a lot of people on screens and things. And whenever Wyatt Russell shows up, he's usually very much in the distance. I don't know how many 2 shots they have of them. It's like all feel very separated. Maybe it's supposed to, emphasize the isolation, but to the point where I was just like, this really feels like it was shot during the height of COVID.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's not, apparently, which is fucking weird. And I guess in 2019, they re-edited the movie after poor test screenings.
Yeah.
And this is what we got?
Yeah. And
What?
we got a new score by Danny Elfman at one point. I don't know if Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross actually recorded anything or if they just were replaced before they even put down a note.
God, can you imagine them wasting their time on this movie?
No.
Can you imagine Danny Elfman wasting his time on this movie?
Yeah. I mean, this is Danny Elfman generic score number 501.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah.
I mean, I like the guy when he does something really good, but for the most part, it's like, okay, this is kind of forgettable. I'm not about to think of any of the themes from this movie or anything.
No, God, no. And what's also weird about this movie for me is the last time I saw a Tracy Letts adaptation, and I know he's adapting his own stuff, so maybe that's why. You've seen Killer Joe from 2011, right?
I don't think I have.
I know you've seen Bug from 2006, the Friedkin film.
I haven't, but I've heard great things about it.
So those two movies are pretty good. And I know they're both based off of Tracy Letts scripts, and he adapted them, which I guess may play into it, but it's weird. I like both of those movies a lot. Like Killer Joe is really good and it has really snappy dialogue, and it's really fucked up too. I mean, I get there's a whole chicken wing fellatio scene, drumstick fellatio scene is probably a better way of putting it. Right. But then you come to some
Friedkins, right?
Is Killer Joe a Friedkin film? I guess so. Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah, I didn't even make sense. But those are really good. And then you come to this, and it's like, what did you see? What did you see in the book? Because again, like the narrative is rather straightforward. Even though there is a twist, it doesn't really do anything unique or exciting with the thriller genre. Mm-hmm. I can't even really fathom, to be honest with you, Mike, what made this book popular? Like, what the fuck? It doesn't have the thing that Girl with the Dragon Tattoo has, which is like a strong 2-character lead of like Mikhail Blomkvist and Lisbeth Salander. But this is like crazy, drugged up psychologist. Like, who the fuck? You know what this is? Is this just like wish fulfillment? Is that what this is?
I mean, it almost feels like, and I hate to say this,
a
true crime podcast. What it feels like to me is like, oh, I've noticed something in my neighborhood that no one else has noticed.
Right. Like, yeah. I honestly thought she was going to be a podcaster.
And let me tell you about the exciting news all about Casper mattresses. That's what I sleep on every night when I take all of my drugs and fall asleep.
Hey, and Sarah Koenig got that guy out of jail, Mike White. Okay.
I have no problems with people with agoraphobia, people that need to take medication, any of that kind of stuff. It's just this portrayal, this character in this movie, she could have been so much more compelling. And I felt nothing for her. She could have been, what's the I can't remember. It's not Scotty Jeffries because that's Vertigo, even though I felt a little bit of Vertigo in this one as well. But I'm trying to remember Jimmy Stewart's name in Rear Window, because I was just like, oh yeah, like he's super compelling in the way that he has to, utilize Grace Kelly to go across the street and put her in danger and all this stuff. I was like, oh, maybe she'll use her border and do that, and then he'll get ganked, because he's the most useless character in this whole movie, other than telling us, oh, it looks like you got a little problem with your skylight here. This will never come back up in the third act of the movie.
You should do a podcast, just that voice. That's
trying to do the guy that sits at the counter in Bob's Burgers,
Oh,
but,
yeah. Whatever that voice is that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's really funny. It's almost like a less mean-spirited Mr. Plinkett. Like,
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, make me pass out. That's whatever that is. You should keep that in your back pocket for a rainy day, pal. Keep that one in a back pocket somewhere.
Yeah, Teddy. I think that's the guy's name.
Yeah, with his little hat.
Yeah.
Oh, I think for me, you mentioned Hitchcock, you mentioned Rear Window. Like, I feel like that's what I was expecting.
Oh,
like with a name like The Woman in the Window, it evokes something. There there's not enough women in the window for me in this movie. Like, I know that sounds weird. Like,
No.
I don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, like the whole woman in the window part of this movie is like 4 scenes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like just the thing you mentioned about it being a podcast, like that what would have made this an interesting movie is if that had been the angle and she had been like a true crime podcaster and they didn't believe her because they're like, you're just looking and for things that aren't there.
Right.
Like, as opposed to like, no, she's nuts because she was taking pills that are making her have hallucinations that say don't take them with alcohol.
Yeah.
What the fuck were we expecting to happen?
Oh man. Yeah. Let me tell you a little story. I'm in 9th grade, between 8th and 9th grade, and I went to this one time at band camp. I went to band camp and they showed Rear Window to a whole room full of, I guess I must have been like 14, 13, something like that. They showed the entire 13, 14-year-olds all the way up to like 17-year-olds, all of these people in band camp. And they just put this on this little TV on a VCR. Here's movie night. Good luck. You could hear a pin drop. That movie, it was probably at the time 40, 30 years old. It had everyone in its grasp. It just had you on the edge of your seat. Thinking about that scene of like Raymond Burr across the street where you just see the light from his cigarette glowing in the dark. You know he's there. You know he's watching Jimmy Stewart. When Grace Kelly does go over to the apartment and you're watching and he's there screaming like, get out of there, get out of there. It's so great. And this movie had none of that. No tension whatsoever.
Yeah, it's fucking bizarre. Because I don't know, for a movie that's a thriller, quote, unquote, where the question always becomes, where does the tension come from? And to your point just now, I don't know where it came from because there wasn't any. There was none. There was never a moment in this movie where I was like, oh my God, Amy Adams is in danger. Even at the end of the movie where there's the twist of the kid across. So the kid across the street's a serial killer, by the way. It's like the laziest twist of lazy twists. Because why? Why do you say that? Because there is a scene in this movie where it's the woman in the window part of the movie. It is the Rear Window like ripoff scene. But it does the thing in this movie that Rear Window doesn't do. In this movie, it's like, we're going to make it pretty obvious who it is. It's not the dad.
You're right.
Because if it were the dad, we would show you Gary Oldman. It's somebody else. Who could it be? Like they have the thing where the kid must be framed in the center where the windows meet. He's right there, standing perfectly in the center. And Julianne Moore is going, whoa, and flying backwards because he's stabbing her, but you can't see him. It's like, Jesus, this is so unbelievably lazy that I cannot imagine anybody watched this and went, yeah, okay. Like, I guess so. It probably worked in the book.
It might, yeah. Well, yeah, you can obfuscate a lot better in the book, I would think. Just like she saw the hands covered in blood, rather than like, can you pull back the camera and show me a little bit more? Because she could see more if she wanted to.
Right. You can give them a lot less in the book, which is why movies like these normally do kind of work, because the book, unless the author is really just Dickensian with the amount of detail, these authors aren't that Dickensian. They don't need to be. That's not their job, is not to do that. Their job is to tell a story with twists and turns. For a thriller, this also has a underwhelming amount of twists and turns. There's two: her family's dead and that it's the kid. But once you find out that her family is dead and that she's been hallucinating, like the movie honestly kind of stopped. I stopped caring even less. Yeah. After it was like, oh yeah, by the way, no, you're right. Like I have been hallucinating. There was nothing going on. And then of course it's like, oh no, but that one thing, the picture, and then, the picture on the screen, whatever. Like, again, like it's not even Julianne Moore. It's like a distorted face. but there's
Right.
not enough twists. There's just not enough compelling stuff going on to keep the viewer engaged. Because 3/4 of this movie is just Amy Adams walking around, staring into the camera, looking forlorn.
Right. Or do the thing that they did in Body Double, where it's, we know over in this apartment building that we're being watched by this woman over here, this totally desperate woman who has no life and is just a voyeur now. We know we're being watched, or the serial killer kid should be like, I know I'm being watched, so I'm going to make this look like it's somebody else doing it. I'm going to pin this on my old man. Why not? Pun intended. But he doesn't. He has no motive. The serial killer has no motivation. It's not even like, oh, I love redheads, I'm going to kill all the redheads that I can. Good thing my mom, my real mom, Jennifer Jason Leigh now, the good thing that her hair is kind of washed out, blondish, grayish, but Julianne Moore, and now you, Amy Adams, I'm going to come after you.
Well, and not only not only do they just not give us any like motivation or reasoning or believable serial killer character, at the end of the movie, they're like, oh yeah, like, by the way, Gary Oldman and Jennifer Jason Leigh were in on it.
I missed that.
They arrested, they say that they arrested the parents too, because they helped them cover up the murder. And it's like,
oh boy.
Wait, why? Why were you helping? Why did you help? Like, so they were in on it, but they weren't in on it, but they were in on it. Like, they're the most ineffectual cops too. Like, the cops are written like idiots. Everybody's written like an idiot in this movie.
Right.
To the point where Amy Adams goes, you're Jane Russell, right? What makes you say that? You're his mother, aren't you? Like, I am. Like, yeah.
I mean, at least they had the thing when they kept saying Jane Russell. I'm like, oh, like the actress. And then when she goes out to Google, or I can't remember if it's actually Google or if it's a generic Google. I always enjoy generic Google. If she goes out and she looks up Jane Russell and it's all of the actress Jane Russell showing up, I was like, okay, good. Thank you for at least acknowledging that this person has the name of a very famous actress.
And another thing I really feel like pointing out, because Richard mentioned it to me last time I spoke with Richard, I'm sick and tired of these like angry white guy serial killer things. Like, give it a fucking rest. Like, for real. Like, this is like just about as stock and trade as it gets. He's just talking in like weird serial killery platitudes that you've heard in Scream 20 years ago. Like, I don't have a motive. Doesn't that make it scarier? Like, I remember when fucking, what's his name? What is it? What's that actor's name? The guy from
Skeet Ulrich?
Skeet Ulrich. I remember when he was saying this 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Like when Matthew Lillard was laughing like an idiot 20 plus years ago. They did it.
So
they
good.
did it better.
I feel a little woozy here, man. It's so good.
My mom and dad are gonna kill me.
Oh,
that is
him.
Good. This is trafficking in that. Yeah. Like, that's what's weird about this movie is this movie might have been better if it had leaned more into being a horror movie. Have the kid like stalking her or something. Like, don't give us that in 2 or 3 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and her detective work. I was like, oh, finally, she's being smart. She's going to be a detective. She's going to find out this whole story here between Alistair Russell and Jane Russell and blah, blah, blah. No. She just, it lasts about 5 minutes and that's about it. It's like, oh, okay. I thought she was actually going to be empowered here. And I guess that's part of the problem too, is that Amy Adams has no power. She is just acted upon. She's not really an actor of her. She doesn't control her own fate in any way, and she should be recognizing all of these things. It's kind of like Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard. Like, she's seen one too many movies, but she's not catching on to, oh, I'm in Rear Window here.
And what I don't understand is she's a child psychologist.
Yes, yeah.
Like, why even mention
she would have picked up on this child that lives across the street,
who's like the equivalent of some sort of like Bundy-esque killer. Like, he's like, I don't know what my modus operandi is yet, but I love killing. Like,
yeah,
God, it's just so...
Again, the killers in the killer in Copycat so much better. Another one, Murder by Numbers. There's some really good serial killers in that one as well.
Talking about the Gosling film?
No, this is from like, again, mid 90s kind of thing. It's the kid, I think he ends up being in Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yeah, that's Ryan and Ryan Gosling.
Oh, that's Ryan Gosling is the other kid.
Yeah.
I only remember the one kid.
Oh yeah, not Michael Shannon, guy who was Gary. Speaking of Gary Oldman, he played Gary Oldman's character on the Hannibal TV show, Mason Verger,
really?
until they recast him because he's a massive asshole. Apparently.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. What is that actor's name?
Michael Pitt.
Michael Pitt.
Okay,
with those ghost eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also,
that's what they were going
games,
for.
right?
Yeah, right. That's what they were going for with this movie. Like that's what they're trafficking in, is like a creepy, and it also kind of feels like cheating when she first meets him and he's clearly playing like on the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
Right. And like I know that's like he's doing that intentionally to disarm her because he already knows that he's a serial killer, and at this point he's already killed one person and he's going to kill 2, 3, but almost 4 by the end of the movie. I mean, that's his like way of kind of camouflaging and hiding, but that feels like a really bad way to hide, like pretending you're on the spectrum. Like, I feel like just acting normal is a better way to do it. It doesn't make as much sense otherwise. Don't draw the attention to yourself by literally drawing attention to yourself at all times.
Right.
It's I'm sick and tired of these serial killer stories that are just like they use the term serial killer to just make him, he's a bad guy.
Right.
It's so fucking lazy. Like this movie is just kind of feels lazy. Like in the book that it's based off of must also be rather lazy.
That's my guess. I mean, it feels like this was the book that you pick up on your way out the checkout, and you're just like, "Ooh, this looks interesting. Oh, I'll pick this up."
And like it's like a beach book.
Totally a beach book. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But like Brad Meltzer is the beach book for your dad, and like this is the beach book for your mom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Let's see. The novel stayed at #1 for 2 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list,
which means absolutely nothing anymore.
Yeah. Bookmarks reported that 38% of critics gave the book a rave review, and another 38% of critics expressed positive impressions. Oh, geez. Based on a sample of 13 reviews. So 13 reviews. All right, great. So a third of them, or 38% said, this is fucking fantastic. Another 38 said, yeah, it's pretty good. Okay.
I guess you know what they say. They need a lot of content over at Netflix.
Yeah.
They're really running out of things to make, apparently. They're just going to buy things that are based off of essentially other people's things. I mean, the director of Copycat essentially said, like, I know that this is pretty much just based off of my movie. I know. I know.
There's another book called Saving April by Sarah Denzel that has a ton of parallels as well. I'm like, okay, that was from 2015 as opposed to this book. And then what? Netflix turns around and says, oh, we're going to make a parody of this as well, with the woman in the house across the street from the girl in the window. And I watched the first episode of that, and I don't know, it's supposed to be a comedy. I'm just like, when does it start to get funny? Like, no offense, but I was just not finding it amusing at all. I'm okay. Like, does it get funny in the second episode, maybe?
And what's wild is that's 8 episodes long.
Episodes.
Yeah. Like,
wow. I'm glad I stopped.
Like, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, there was like maybe 2 things that were funny. Rather than agoraphobia, she has a fear of rain, and she's taking a casserole across the street. It starts to rain. She passes out. The casserole drops. The next day she goes and takes another casserole. The old casserole is still sitting in the middle of the street. That was amusing.
I chuckled heartily. Maybe not even heartily.
I don't think I chuckled. I might have smiled wryly.
Not nary a chortle was had in the White House.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ, to write a thriller is one thing, to adapt it well is another, and then to make a successful parody off of it. Like, what are you trying to do here, Netflix?
How many times are you going back to the well?
And how many times are you going to fail? Because show came out, I heard nothing about it. Nobody talked about it. Maybe There's the thing, like I have this weird like crossover thing where I do a true crime, paranormal, supernatural podcast, and these kinds of things would be in the wheelhouse of the kinds of people that my show appeals to. But like, it's a joke now that it's like these white housewives in their 40s who are into this content, and now they're just like hanging a lantern on it by having the characters be that way. That they mix alcohol with their medication. Like, that these things are like making fun of you if that's the case.
Right.
It's kind of poking fun at you and what they perceive you are and the perception of you as like an old biddy in her house alone. Like, who is this appealing to? I just don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, this feels sub-Lifetime.
Yes. But how are the people that are in it? Like,
I know.
It's like fucking insanity. It's the best student film ever made. Like,
yeah. Is it just that Netflix can back up a dump truck and dump a pile of money on their lawn and say, okay, here you go, Amy Adams? Because she's in better projects almost all the time.
I think everybody is. Like, even someone who is like kind of, hit or miss as Gary Oldman, like, what is he doing in this movie? Like, must have been the easiest $10 he ever made.
The only thing I can figure is because he was, what's the name of the director? Joe Wright.
Joe Wright. He was. Yeah.
He played
Churchill
in the movie before. Yeah. So he's probably like, hey, Gary, come on. I got another project for you.
Remember when I got you your Oscar?
Right. Yeah. All right, Joseph, I will.
Does it have me to play a short person?
Do I have to use my English accent or can I play an American?
You remember that movie where he's a little person?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tiptoes.
That was
fucking fantastic.
What a movie.
Matthew Bright, man.
Oh,
fucking A.
God.
Savior of the cinema, Matthew Bright.
I mean, any movie that requires Gary Oldman to be a little person on his knees all movie is fine.
So good. With those thick glasses and everything.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about Matthew McConaughey movies earlier with that Killing Joe movie.
Killer Joe,
yeah. So he's right there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's weird. Like, everybody in this movie is better in almost everything else they're ever in.
Right. Well, I was particularly offended about the whole Jennifer Jason Leigh thing because it's like, Jennifer Jason Leigh, she's not in that many movies that much anymore.
No.
And it's like when she shows up in, I mean, I don't like the movie, but when she showed up in Hateful Eight, I was like, oh, wow, Jennifer Jason Leigh, fucking fantastic. I hope this really puts her back on the map because, I grew up watching Jennifer Jason Leigh movies. If it did, I'm not aware of it. I think she's continuing to make like a lot of TV series now, which I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'm looking for like, hey, come on back and let's get you in more things rather than just like bit parts in Twin Peaks and Annihilation. Like, I want you to be like the star. And when she shows up and she barely has any lines, she's barely in the movie. There's no connection between her and anybody else in this whole thing. I'm just like, he rent her from like did he call a service and get her to show up here? Because
or is it just stunt casting? Like,
I'm like, what is this?
I don't know. It's super odd because she shows up and on top of everything else, they like do this thing. I don't know how else to call it. Like ugly her down.
Oh, I know.
Like, to make it seem like are they trying to do it so that it's like not her? Like, I don't like not draw attention to the fact that it's Jennifer Jason Leigh. Like, I don't understand.
Well, that's the thing too, because I'm like, well, they should have at least given her like red hair to have her look a little bit more like Julianne Moore. Like, I could see, going back to Single White Female, like I was thinking like, oh, she's the doppelganger. She looks so much like Julianne Moore that we can say, Amy Adams, you're ridiculous. This is my wife. You mistook her for somebody else or somebody else that looks kind of like her, and like really make that difference difficult to tell. But they don't do it. They don't do it at all. Because to your point, she's dowdy as fuck.
I have a confession though. Like, I don't really care for Julianne Moore. I don't know why. I think it stems from her in Lost World. The first time I ever saw her in anything, she's the worst part of that movie by like a country mile. And I know that it's not her fault, but I've really not seen her in much that I like her in. Even the things that I know people like her in, like Big Lebowski, it's just like, you're the worst part of this movie for me. And I have to get it off my chest, Mike. I have to come clean.
That's fine.
Nobody actually cares, Chris.
I can understand. I mean, she has been in some really bad things like Evolution or Hannibal.
Okay, hold on. Stop. I'm going to stop you there.
You're
Listen
a big
here.
Evolution
You
fan,
keep
aren't
Evolution off your lips, sir.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I
Wow.
like Evolution, but I'm not going to. She's not good in that movie. That movie is fun because it's the closest we've ever gotten to Ghostbusters. Even now, with Ghostbusters that came out last year, it's still the closest we've ever gotten to Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
In a substantive, non just digging up the old dude's way.
I think I like her earlier stuff better. And I like some of the stuff that she's done, especially with Todd Haynes. But then she works a lot with Paul Thomas Anderson. And I'm not a big fan of his.
Me either.
And I still haven't seen Blindness. I wanted to see that one. But yeah, you mentioned like a lot of the big roles. I guess one of the first things I ever saw her in was Shortcuts. And she definitely showed a lot. And I appreciated that.
What?
That was like the first time I ever saw a bottomless scene in a mainstream movie. Yes.
Whoa. Okay. Interesting. Huh.
Hmm.
And she replaced our girl.
Larry Sterling.
God, what a fucking mess. I mean, again, like, I don't hold it against Julianne Moore, but
No.
she is in that movie.
Yeah.
And she is not good in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
As the
And then
follow-up to like one of the greatest movies ever made. Like, I'm sorry.
when she starts doing the West Virginia accent, I was like,
Oh,
this hurts.
Oh, I just want to slam my head against some glass until I pass out.
Oh.
Pennywise style. Yeah, look, I know she has the roles that people really like her in, and that's a lot of like, again, like Big Lebowski, and she's done a lot of recent stuff that I think people like her for. But for me, it's always been I can't get into her acting style or whatever it is she does. And that's, that's fine. But Amy Adams, like, I'm trying to figure out what Amy Adams did to deserve this movie. I like her in everything. She's so good.
Oh, yeah. And she just seems like she would be the sweetest person in the entire world.
I know. And like the character that she plays in this movie is also so against type too.
Right. Like,
I don't know. Like, I know that has nothing to do with it and my ability to enjoy this movie, but like, she's not being used to her best abilities here. Like, remember in the Muppets how charming she is in that movie,
or Enchanted.
Yeah, like, good God, like, this is the same actress and you gave her nothing to do. So,
well, there's that whole, I'm trying to remember what the twist is with Arrival, but like, she had gravitas in Arrival. I mean, she's got gravitas in a lot of stuff, I mean, granted, she was in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I mean,
she kind of got roped into that one by being in Man of Steel. So
yeah. But it's like, American Hustle. And I liked her in Big Eyes, and like,
she was pretty good in Her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she's a good actress.
She's a great actress, I think.
Yeah, even in something like, do you remember her in Talladega Nights?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good that.
She could play comedy like nobody's business.
Yeah. And Sunshine Cleaning, that's another.
Oh boy.
Right. What a movie. Kind of got forgotten. I don't know why. I thought that movie was going to be something.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like they were making it out to be, and that's the last thing that the director did.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Which is given like how high up that movie put those two. Amy Adams and Emily Blunt. So you're right, because I always think for whatever reason it's Judy Greer. It's Emily Blunt who's like, meteorically risen as an actress now too.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, this movie, I think, speaking to when it's made, I think is maybe what matters more than anything else. The fact that this movie was made so long ago, when Jennifer Jason Leigh had just come off of Annihilation, and Amy Adams was kind of just kicking around working on random things like Vice and Justice League. Like, I don't know, like this movie in a lot of ways, like we can really speak to it. It feels like a COVID movie, but it also just kind of feels like a movie that they sat on.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes kind of sense why.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's fun in kind of a bad way, but I don't like doing that with movies.
Yeah. Like I could see somebody taking this and being like, let's have a bad movie night and show Woman in the Window.
Yeah.
Because I could see people howling and cackling at certain things that happen in this movie.
He's my guy.
Which is not the intention of the filmmakers whatsoever. But yeah, I think the thing is that this movie is funnier than the parody of this movie.
That is somehow a bigger success than it actually being funny.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's
God. Yeah. What's so fucking strange ultimately about this movie is there's a twist that they do not telegraph, that they expect us to use to recontextualize the first half of the first 2/3 of the movie, but the twist doesn't matter. And then the movie just kind of does this little hackneyed thing that we've all seen before, where it turns out it's the killer kid. And it's like, by that point, like the movie has lost all steam. Like I wonder what the reshoots were. Because if it's this muddle-headed and it was reshot and redone, like, what was it like before? It feels like, for me, most of my criticism with this movie is in the third act, where it just like has completely fallen apart. Like, right? Like it just kind of limps into the third act.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, just the way that these actors are separated, they could have recast any one of these actors, and that could have been the reshoots. It could have been like, you know what? This kid really isn't working out. We're just going to get a new serial killer kid, or the downstairs boarder isn't working out. We're going to get a new guy. Any of that. Or, I mean, for fuck's sake, Anthony Mackie's character could be replaced so easily because there's one scene where you actually see him and the rest is all voiceover.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this just goes back to the source material and being hamstrung with a weirdo book, but the book is popular. People liked it. This is not like they were adapting some weird thing that people have been asking for, but nobody has been willing to adapt. This should have been a rather straightforward story, but instead of it being a straightforward story, it hinges on this whole, you don't know what reality is because you're drugged up. And I just, like you said, with characters being drunk, you're not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of this either. Because like questioning one's reality is done very poorly more times than it's done well. And certain things are trading in it almost entirely. And this apparently is one of those things. And I don't think it's very successful. And we're supposed to understand that the first 3/4 of this movie is not really the way it happened. And okay.
Yeah.
Fuck you then.
She's actually like, there are two people that are the same person. It's her and her alternate person, Tyler Durden, that just keeps showing up.
Oh, thank you. Is that what it is?
But what we needed was a montage to show us like, oh, that was actually Tyler doing that, not her. So yeah.
See, and ultimately for me, like, I don't know how you feel about, how do you, as we bring this episode to kind of its logical, I would say abortion, but conclusion.
Jeez, that's not legal in this state. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. How dare you? As we bring this episode to its logical conclusion, how do you feel about movies with big twists in them?
As long as they're handled well, great. Yeah. Like, yeah, Memento. We talked about Sixth Sense. Like, yeah, there are some great movies, and the movies where I want to watch them for a second time to get that twist again, or to see like those hints. But then you get other movies with twists where I'm just like, I don't want to ever see this again. Like some of the other M. Night movies, or I'm not a big fan of The Usual Suspects, because once they revealed what happened in that, I was like, I don't really want to watch this again. I don't care how this stuff happened.
Talk about another movie that almost relies entirely on a storytelling format that very little people do well and a massive twist.
Yeah.
Ugh. Duh.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, some of the M. Night stuff, like The Village, I'm just like, yeah, no shit.
I feel like, again, I just recently did an episode with Mark Begley all about those early 3 M. Night movies, and only one of them really has like a big twist, and it's The Sixth Sense, obviously. And I said it there, I'll say it here. The best kind of twists in movies don't really change anything as much as totally make sense when you go and relook at it. And it just recontextualizes everything, but it doesn't outright change things. Because the worst twists are the ones that like make no sense, completely change things, and leave the audience going, well, if I go back and watch it, did you break this like 8 or 9 times and just not care? Because like they do it all the time in really crappy thrillers, horror movies, stuff like this. But the thing in this is actually like rather handled rather well up until the moment where they reveal it. Because again, like it's obvious what's going on. We just don't know what it is. There's clear that something is happening. We just don't know to what extent or how much or what it is. But when they use this twist to like show us, she's been on drugs, she's hallucinating, her family's dead, and her brain can't handle it. Like, it doesn't change anything. It changes nothing about the movie. Frankly, it makes us ask more questions like, is everybody's weirdo acting just because of her being on drugs then? Because then it would have made more sense if they had shown that she was just like, everybody starts acting normal the moment she's off of the drugs. And I was kind of wondering, did you notice in the movie if that was the case or not? Because I was kind of watching to see if her interactions with people got more stable. And there are so few interactions past the twist that we really don't ever get to see.
Right. Yeah, it's just her and the cop. And I'm like, okay.
Like his interactions with her were kind of like that to begin with.
Right.
And like, we don't really see Wyatt Russell enough to know. And then Fred Heckinger, like, yeah, he was putting on airs the whole time anyways. So his interactions with her were never that like ones to look to anyways. So I wonder if that's what it was. But if that's the case, that's us doing that, not the movie. Because I got to assume that the movie is not doing that intentionally. It's just poor screenwriting.
That's my feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. What a weirdo movie, man.
Yeah.
I expect less weird movies with these actors, like a movie to be significantly less weird than this one is. Yeah. With like some of the 3 of the bigger actors working in the industry right now. Like,
I mean, I didn't realize I've been so out of touch, but like this got nominated for so many things for the Razzies this year, and I just didn't even pay attention to the Razzies, as if they didn't mean anything and were just kind of mean-spirited and wrong most of the time.
I mean, any award that's given to people for, bad things, I feel like is kind of like you're just terrible too for assigning that.
Exactly.
I do like that the Alliance of Women Film Journalists gave the She Deserves a New Agent award to Amy Adams.
So good. So good.
She does. Like, of all the people in this movie that deserve better, Amy Adams is at the top of the list. Like, Anthony
100%.
Mackie works on all kinds of Russo brothers bullshit. And Gary Oldman's been acting for so long that you could go look at, we already mentioned Tiptoes. Like, we already mentioned his weirdo stuff that he's worked on. But Amy Adams is a much better actress than to be a lead in this kind of like bizarro fever dream of a movie. Yeah. But she's my guy. That's my guy. What a fucking, that's going to be the thing I remember from this movie. He's my guy. But you're never theirs. They're never yours. You're theirs, Mike. Don't you understand that?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm glad you got murdered.
That's deep.
Julianne Moore is playing the kind of character that just like, I don't know what that character is, but Julianne Moore played it really well. I'll give her that. Like, just like the manic mom of the year.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Manic pixie dead girl.
Yeah. So, Mike White, final thoughts on The Woman in the Window.
Yeah, unless you're planning on watching this with a group and having some drinks or other substances involved, don't bother.
Yeah, I agree. It's rare to see a movie with this big of a budget, with this many big name people, be this bizarre and strange and idiosyncratic in a way that movies with these kinds of actors normally aren't, because these kinds of actors normally don't. You know what this reminded me of? Did you ever see that Matthew McConaughey movie? The really weird one, the one with the really weird twist that's not earned at all.
Oh,
The one with the twist that literally breaks the movie. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it the
boat
virtual
one?
reality one?
Yeah, that's what this reminds me of. I was expecting
wow.
that to be the twist. Like, honestly, I thought the twist in this movie was going to be she was a podcaster and she had concocted this whole story and she was telling it.
I think we might have hit on something that's better than what's in this movie.
I think that would have been a better movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that for me is my whole concern with this movie is there is a better movie in here. This is just like the easiest, weakest, and most mainstream ready way to do this story. Mm-hmm. And if that's what they were going for, they nailed it. But too bad people didn't really want to watch it. I guess people read the book more than they watched the movie, which is fine. So,
and maybe that's fine. Maybe this is a really good book and we're just slagging it off. Maybe this is the perfect beach book.
I'm sure it is the perfect beach book. I'm sure it is. It probably is. Yeah, this is... Ugh. Well, Netflix, you've done it again. So on that note, we'll play a preview for the next totally good movie of Netflix month. Or not Netflix, so Horrortober, I guess is what this is.
Hey, I'm Haley. I live down the road. I'm Eli. You say you're what, like allergic to the world, right? I guess you could say that.
We looked everywhere for a doctor to help you. You're gonna get better.
Promise?
Promise.
Hello, Eli. I'm Dr. Horn.
Hello.
I hope you don't think of this as a medical facility. To me, it's a home. And for now, it's your home.
Oh, it's been so long. Everything we hoped for is right here.
Shall we begin? What do you think is making you sick?
Lots of things. The air, water, dust.
Eli's gonna get worse before he gets better.
There's something in my room.
Bad dreams are a side effect. It's perfectly normal.
I don't mean to freak you out, but this place gives me the creeps. I think she's making me sicker.
It's the medication.
I know it's not the medication. Why do I feel worse?
Because it's working.
I think something bad is happening. To leave. Is his life in danger? Why are you doing this?
You are sicker than you realize.
Get away from me! I'm not sick! Let me out! Let me out!
You're gonna get better.
Promise?
That's right. On the next Horrortober, the Horror of Netflix edition, we're going to be talking about Netflix's Eli, which I have been told by Mark Begley is probably the craziest movie of the month, twist-wise, narrative-wise. So we'll see. I'm going to be joined by the Taxi Podcast, Harris Porter. It's going to be his first time on here without Father Malone. So
no training wheels.
The training wheels are off, boys. Meat's back on the menu too. Until then, Mike, what's going on over at the Projection Booth podcast?
Well, I'm just watching really bad made for Netflix movies, and
that's
I'm gonna
me.
be moving. Oh, right. No, I'm just watching really bad made for Amazon movies. How's that?
Oh, okay.
I'm just watching Crackle and just enjoying
Tubi?
A lot of Crackle. Yeah.
What was the other one? What was the one that like was there for a hot minute and then it was gone? Ubi? Zubort?
Oh,
the Katzenberg one.
Quibi. Yeah.
Quibi. We're bringing back Reno 911. It'll bring everybody to this platform's gone.
Yeah.
My home planet needs me. I was like there for 8 months. That was it. Like,
yeah.
fucking Christ.
Over at the projection booth, we are talking about Shocktober, and I'm just about to release the Dawn of the Dead episode where fellow Weirding Way Media personality Father Malone has a appearance on there as my co-host. So talking about that, we've also got Jamie Russell on that episode. He is the man who wrote a huge book about zombies that I highly recommend. So it's a great discussion and just one of 4 things that we're putting out here in Shocktober 2022. And you can get that over at theprojectionbooth.com or preferably weirdingwaymedia.com.
Yeah, I would say the same place you could find me is weirdingwaymedia.com. 19 podcasts, including this one and counting. And if you can't find something over there to listen to, are you really looking that hard? From new stuff to old stuff and everything in between. So that's where you can find me, Weirding Way Media. Mike and I do a lot of podcasts together. Father Malone's got some stuff, and some people that have never been on my show or most people's shows. They have their own shows. Everything you could ever want at Weirding Way Media. This show, Kulturecast.com, the Kulturecast on all social media. But that stuff sucks. We all know it. I know it. You know it. Don't just listen to the show, rate and review on iTunes. That's all you got to do. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate being here.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, how often do we get to talk about new bad movies? Infrequently.
Very much. No, I mean, I think the last time was Zack Snyder's Justice League.
God, yeah. Hey, Amy Adams. Hey, I find a good Amy Adams movie to watch together at some point.
Exactly.
Stinking it up with everything else. Jesus. And, yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode.